Chapter 1. They told me at 4:00 p.m. it was restructuring. I left the office with a cardboard box and a smile. They thought they'd broken me. They didn't know I'd already filed a patent, lined up my team, and booked a press briefing for Monday morning. Their mistake, assuming talent is replaceable. If someone ever tried to erase your work, this is the quiet war they didn't see coming. Smash that like button, subscribe, and let me tell you how I turned a pink slip into a power play. My name is Maya Alvarez, and for 18 years I built things people said were too complicated to imagine. I architected systems, not classical buildings, but invisible frameworks that move money, manage risk, and keep Fortune 500 ledgers honest. I was the lead systems architect for North Harbor Labs, a scrappy Seattle fintech startup that became too big for its boots. People on LinkedIn called me a visionary. My email signature read, Principal Architect, Distributed Systems and Data Integrity. At industry conferences, men in cheaper suits quoted my white papers like scripture. Back inside the glass tower, my diagrams were the scaffolding that kept North Harbor's flagship product, Ledger Mesh, faster, smarter, and inexplicably sticky to clients. I loved the work the way a musician loves a piano, calluses on the fingertips, a hush in the chest when everything lines up. My team was my band, 6 engineers, sharp as welder sparks, people I'd hired, mentored, defended. We lived for late-night deployments and bad coffee. We joked about who'd outlive the servers. We were family in the way colleagues become family when you've bled over the same keyboard. So when they asked me to clean out my desk, it didn't feel like betrayal at first. It felt pathological, the kind of clinical cruelty that hides behind HR PowerPoint slides. It happened on a Wednesday. The conference room was small, the blinds down, fluorescent light buzzing like a guilty insect. The VP of People, a woman with a sympathy smile that never reached her eyes, read from the script about market shifts and the need to lean into younger, growth-oriented roles. Her voice floated, and I listened for the part where they admit this is about optics, not performance. They slid the non-disclosure form across the table. A polite severance package. A handshake that felt like cotton. I kept my face neutral, the one I'd learned in 1,000 boardrooms. Polite, composed, unbroken. On my walk back to my office, the elevator felt heavier than usual. The hallway hummed with other voices, a junior developer asking about PTO, the CTO coughing behind closed doors. I cradled the cardboard box of mementos, a chipped mug from a hackathon, a dog-eared copy of Designing Data-Intensive Applications, a small plaque the engineering leads had given me for late nights and real fixes. I had known the signs were coming. For months, the product leadership had been introduced to a new face. Derek Voss, a VP poached from a competitor and draped in MBA confidence. Derek loved slides and buzzwords and the smell of fresh valuations. He liked his team slim and malleable. He liked headlines more than refactors. He'd come in saying, "We need to be lean, lean. Layoffs disguised as efficiency. But the moment that turned the script into a crime happened 3 months earlier. A misdirected email from legal that landed in my inbox by accident. An internal memo titled IP Consolidation Strategy with bullet points like document creators as contributors, and my stomach went cold. They planned to push R&D into a single box, bury inventor attribution, and claim that the algorithmic core belonged to the company generically. The memo described a timeline. Push out senior staff, consolidate, file blanket assignment forms. They had underestimated one thing. I never trusted anything to chance. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house had settled into the soft breathing of suburbia, I opened my personal laptop and started logging. Not just the "did you do this at 3 a.m." type of notes, real development timelines, commit hashes, console logs, the timestamps of late-night builds. I mirrored everything I could to an encrypted drive, then to a personal cloud I'd set up years earlier for tax reasons and pride of ownership. When North Harbor finally told me to pack up, I wasn't scrambling. I had prepared for the inevitable when vigilance still seemed paranoid. As I stacked the last of the personal effects into the box and closed the office door, my team filtered past. Miguel, the lead dev who could coax performance out of rusting servers, dropped a printed sticky note into my box. Don't let them rewrite you. Anita, who wrote unit tests that made production safe, gripped my hand and mouthed, "Call me." We didn't need to say the plan out loud. The shared code is the proof, and we had it. On the street, the December air cut through my coat. Rain threatened the bay, and the smell of salt rode the wind. I folded the thin severance agreement into my wallet and walked to my car. People who saw me probably thought I looked small and vulnerable, corporate casualty number 42. Inside the glove compartment lay my notepad with the last line I'd written the night legal's memo had first arrived. Start personal patent document, extramoral improvements, preserve team. It was a small, almost childish thing, a checklist. Yet to me, it read like a battle plan. That night, I set 3 things into motion. First, I pulled the final devlogs together and consolidated commits, showing that critical modules, the ones that made Ledger Mesh outperform competitors on transaction through proof, had been developed on my personal equipment during off hours. Not incidental fixes, but architectural shifts I'd prototyped at home, then hardened at work. The timestamps were messy and human. 2:14 a.m., 3:02 a.m., 4:35 a.m. Beautiful proof that the mind that built it sometimes beats at night. Second, I booked a private dinner with Elliot Reed, CTO of Vector Core, North Harbor's largest rival. Elliot and I had been industry friends for a decade. He knew the value of a reliable algorithm and the smell of stolen credit. He'd promised help months ago, an attorney contact, a conduit to a startup that valued creators. I reserved a table downtown for Friday night. Third, I quietly messaged every member of my team. Meet me at 6 p.m. Thursday. Bring laptop. No explanation, no plea, just logistics. I didn't need promises. We'd already been through every outage and merger storm together. They'd seen the memo too. They knew. As I walked home through puddled streets and neon reflections, a police siren wailed distant and close. I thought about how companies convince themselves that code is a commodity and not a human artifact. They think creators are replaceable cogs. Maybe they are in the boardroom, but not in reality. I made coffee at midnight and opened the patent portal. I learned the process years ago. The way to protect code wasn't always obvious, but it was possible. There are tangible things, unique implementations, novel process flows, claims written in the careful, boring language that keeps lawyers awake. I drafted claims that described the process, not the product name. I attached development logs, home workstation metadata, and a sworn statement that the innovation was conceived and prototyped outside the company's resources. Filing a patent felt oddly intimate, a legal handprint, an insistence that my fingerprints belong on the thing I built. I hit submit at 2:03 a.m., and the portal returned a confirmation number. I took a long breath, let the caffeine and adrenaline settle into a patient calm. I had bought myself a time window. On Friday morning, as the glass doors of North Harbor opened to a swarm of anxious developers and the city's gray morning, I placed a single call to Elliot. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Maya," he said, tone flat from his own early start. "We've been watching them. We've been waiting." "Good," I said. "Bring Vector Core's legal. Meet me at Meridian at 7. I signed something last night." I let the words hang. "Bring your people." He laughed softly, not with malice, with that sound that understands the satisfaction of a plan. "I'll be there." The chairman, who loved press. Later that day, as Derek strutted through meetings and Victor photos more than facts posed for a marketing shoot, I walked out of the building with my cardboard box and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. The world assumed I'd been flattened. They had no idea a storm had already been filed. They thought I left with nothing but a box. They didn't know I'd left with the only thing that mattered, documented proof that the work belonged to me. Monday would be messy. I smiled at the rain and thought about how quickly desperation makes people visible. Friday night came like the pause before a lightning strike. The rain that had been threatening all week finally broke over Seattle, slanting sheets of silver and noise. Downtown shimmered like a wet blade as I stepped into the Meridian Hotel bar, its glass walls fogged with condensation and conversations. Elliot Reed was already there, nursing a bourbon and pretending not to look impatient. He was the kind of man who aged into precision. Salt and pepper hair, jacket that probably cost more than my car, but eyes that missed nothing. "You look calm," he said as I sat down. "I'm not," I replied, "but it helps to pretend." He raised his glass to pretending. We claimed quiet, deliberate, and then we talked business. I laid out everything, the IP memo, the internal emails, the patent confirmation receipt from the U.S. Patent Office, time-stamped 2:03 a.m. that morning. His attorney joined halfway through. Clara Shin, patent shark, turned startup strategist. She skimmed my documents, nodding occasionally, and finally said, "They're dead in the water, if this checks out." I smiled. It checks out. While we talked, the TV over the bar played a muted segment about North Harbor Labs' next-gen L-driven ledger. Derek, sleek as ever, was giving sound bites about innovation, claiming proprietary design advancements by our senior architecture team. That team was me. I gestured toward the screen. "They're launching Monday." Elliot leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" "Stop them," I said, "but not with noise. I want them to implode under their own signatures." That weekend, I slept maybe 4 hours in total. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw versions of the company unraveling. Derek's smirk cracking in a boardroom, Victor's fake smile dissolving in front of investors. I wanted it, but I also feared it, because revenge real, precision-engineered revenge requires absolute calm, and I wasn't calm. Not yet. By Sunday, I had the next step ready. I sent a single email from an anonymous account to North Harbor's general counsel, subject line, "Patent conflict notice. Ledger mesh core algorithm." The body was only one line. "A provisional patent application, number 87924-13, has been filed by independent inventor Maya Alvarez, covering identical claims used in North Harbor Labs' Ledger mesh product. Legal exposure is imminent." No threats, no flair, just a seed of panic. At 9 a.m. Monday, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Missed calls, unknown numbers. A text from Miguel, "They know." Derek screaming in legal. Another from Anita, "They're trying to find your NDA copy. Don't answer." I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and watched the ripple effect online. North Harbor's press release about their proprietary architecture was supposed to go live at 9:15. It never did. By 9:30, their internal systems had gone into lockdown mode. By 10:00, rumors started spreading on Slack channels across the city's tech ecosystem. Something about a patent dispute, internal leaks, and a quiet engineer who'd outplayed them. I hadn't said a word, but my silence had become its own kind of rumor. Around noon, the first official response came in the form of an email from Derek Voss himself. "Maya, let's not escalate this. You know as well as I do that anything you developed while under contract is property of North Harbor. I'm sure legal can reach an amicable agreement if you withdraw your application immediately. Derek, amicable agreement." I read it twice, smiling. I replied with a single sentence, "You might want to check the timestamps before claiming ownership." And then I turned off my phone. That afternoon, my attorney Clara filed for expedited review of the provisional patent due to potential infringement. Within hours, an automatic alert was generated in the public registry. Anyone monitoring for overlapping IP filings would see it, including North Harbor's investors. By evening, the company's name started trending on Twitter under #stolen code. thanks to a few strategically placed whispers from Vector Core's PR team. No accusations, just concerns. And with that, the stock that had been climbing all quarter began its quiet, elegant descent. But power never concedes quietly. By Tuesday, I received a letter thick, embossed, the kind that smells like intimidation. It was a cease and desist from North Harbor's attorneys, demanding I retract all filings and return proprietary code under the terms of my employment agreement. They cited the NDA I'd signed 12 years ago, the one Derek was sure would bind me forever. He didn't realize I'd kept every version of that document. The original NDA had an expiration clause after 5 years, never renewed. And the later drafts, I'd never signed them. They tried to push a blanket update during a system-wide policy change in 2018. I'd refused quietly, politely, claiming I hadn't reviewed the language. HR forgot to follow up. That negligence was about to cost them millions. Miguel called that night from his personal number. "They're freaking out," he said, whispering like he was in a war zone. "Legal told Derek the code base has questionable authorship. They froze release. Investors are demanding clarification." I heard shouting in the background, someone slamming a desk. Miguel lowered his voice. "He's blaming you for everything." "Good," I said. "That means he's running out of people to lie to." There was a pause. Then he asked, "Do you ever get scared, Maya?" I thought about that. The first time, yes, I said. Now? No. Fear's the thing that made me quiet. Anger's what made me effective. By Wednesday, North Harbor's press silence became deafening. Tech journalists began circling like vultures, hungry for scandal. Articles popped up with titles like, "Patent filing could delay North Harbor's ledger mesh launch," and "Anonymous engineer throws fintech giant into crisis." Anonymous. I liked that word. Elliot called me that night, voice steady. "Vector Core's board wants to meet. They're impressed." I laughed softly. Impressed is good, but I'm not done yet. "What's next?" he asked. I looked out at the Seattle skyline, the neon shimmer of a city built on code, power, and arrogance. "Next," I said, "we make it public that they tried to erase me." The plan was simple and brutal. Thursday morning, Clara scheduled a press briefing at a neutral co-working hub. Just me, her, and a small crowd of journalists who already smelled blood. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't rant. I just presented evidence. Development logs. Dated prototypes. Proof that my code was conceived before North Harbor ever funded a line of it. And then I ended with one sentence. All I ever wanted was credit for the work I built with my own hands. If they'd given that, none of this would be happening. The room erupted in questions, but I was already walking out calm, unbothered, power reclaimed. By noon, headlines exploded across the tech line. Engineer fired before patent filing dispute erupts. North Harbor faces allegations of intellectual theft. Their stock dropped 12% in a day. Investors froze funding. Clients paused renewals. And inside that building of glass and ego, Derek's empire cracked audibly. That evening, as I poured a glass of wine and watched the chaos unfold online, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Congratulations, you've made your point. Are you happy now?" I stared at it for a moment before replying, "Not yet." Because revenge wasn't about headlines. It was about finality. And the finale, the part where Derek finally saw what real accountability looks like, was still to come. They'd lost investors, credibility, and sleep, but they still hadn't learned humility. And I still had one last perfect move to play, the one that would end Derek's reign for good. Friday morning, 1 week since the layoff. 7 days since they thought I walked away with nothing. By now, North Harbor Labs was hemorrhaging credibility. Investors wanted transparency, clients wanted clarification, and journalists wanted blood. But Derek, he wanted control. He'd always been good at performance, the MBA confidence, the buzzword dialect, the casual arrogance of a man who'd never been told no. He thought he could still spin it. That morning he called me. No greeting, just, "We both know this has gone too far." I sipped my coffee and let him hang in the silence. "The company's in chaos," he continued, voice cracking beneath the practiced tone. "If we can reach a settlement, if you retract your claims, we can all move on." "Move on," I repeated softly, like I was tasting the phrase. "Derek, you erased my name from my own architecture documents." "That was an oversight," he lied smoothly. "Legal," I cut him off. "Legal doesn't accidentally delete 6 author attributions and replace them with core team. That's policy. That's theft." He inhaled sharply. "You don't understand the politics here," I smiled. "You're right, I understand systems, not politics. Systems are easier to break." Click. The next day, I filed an official complaint with the SEC, not about patent theft, but about investor misrepresentation. You see, their last quarterly report claimed Ledger Mush was fully proprietary and protected by existing IP. That was a lie, a provable one, and that made it a federal problem. Clara sent the documentation, the SEC acknowledged receipt within 48 hours. Derek had no idea yet that his worst nightmare had just been signed, sealed, and time-stamped. Meanwhile, my former team, the ones who'd stayed behind, started calling me one by one. Miguel first. "They're imploding, Maya. HR's doing interviews, legal's panicking, people are quitting." "Good," I said. "They deserve better." Then Anita, "They're offering retention bonuses if we stay through the transition," she said bitterly. "Half the devs already walked out. I'll need resumes soon," I told her. "Vector Core's opening a new innovation division." There was a pause. Then she whispered, "You planned this." I smiled. "No, Anita. I just stopped pretending I didn't see what was coming." By midweek, the SEC quietly reached out for clarification. Not confirmation, just the kind of email that makes executives lose sleep. That was all it took. Because in business, perception is currency, and North Harbor's vault was empty. By Thursday morning, the first investor withdrawal hit. By Thursday night, rumors of corporate misconduct spread like wildfire. The stock plummeted another 18% overnight. The company's PR team went into full spin mode, releasing a desperate statement about creative disputes and transitioning leadership. In translation, they were preparing to throw Derek under the bus. Friday afternoon, I got a message from a number I didn't recognizing. "They're turning on me. You win. Just stop." I read it twice and realized it was Derek. Still pleading. Still thinking there was a version of this story where he could talk his way out. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Clara. "Send this to the SEC," I wrote. "Proof of coercive contact." Her response came instantly. "Perfect. He's done." Saturday morning, the story broke wide open. The Seattle Chronicle ran an expose. North Harbor executive faces SEC review after whistleblower complaint. They didn't name me, but they didn't have to. Everyone in the industry knew. LinkedIn lit up with think pieces about ethical innovation, credit ownership, female engineers in fintech. I didn't write any of them. I didn't need to. My silence had become louder than their defense. By Sunday, Derek was officially suspended pending investigation. Victor, the chairman, released a statement about the importance of integrity in leadership. Translation: "We're firing him before the investors do." I watched the live stream of his departure on a local tech feed. He exited the building surrounded by HR reps and legal counsel, face gray, jaw tight. The man who once bragged about disrupting industries had just been disrupted himself. But the most satisfying moment came 2 weeks later. I was in my home office when my email pinged. A message from the U.S. Patent Office. Status update. Your provisional application has advanced to formal review. Crime area examiner assigned. I leaned back in my chair, smiling quietly. The patent was alive, and mine alone. 2 hours later, a second email arrived. From Vector Core Legal. Congratulations, Maya. The board has approved your proposal for the new ledger division. Your title, Director of Systems Architecture. Your equity package, generous. Attached, a press release draft. Vector Core hires former North Harbor architect to lead innovation team. It wasn't just victory, it was reclamation. A week after that, a reporter reached out asking for comment about Derek's resignation. I declined the interview. Instead, I sent her a short quote. When people treat creators like resources, they forget one thing. Resources regenerate elsewhere. She printed it as the closing line. 3 months later, North Harbor filed for bankruptcy protection. Investors withdrew. Clients defected. Staff scattered. Ledger Mesh died quietly. The code frozen in legal limbo. Unusable without my patent authorization. Meanwhile, Vector Core launched its new platform, Lattice. Faster, safer, sleeker. Built by my old team. Signed, owned, and protected under my name. But revenge isn't just about career wins. It's psychological, the subtle thrill of balance restored. So when Derek sent his final email, "I hoped you're proud of yourself. You ruined everything," I finally replied, "No, Derek. I just corrected the record." And then I blocked him. That night, as rain began again against the windows, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and watched the city lights blink below. For the first time, the hum of servers and ambition felt distant, replaced by something cleaner, quieter. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness, but the kind that comes from justice done right. He'd been erased from the company, the industry, and the story. But I wasn't finished, because revenge isn't real until everyone knows who the real author was. It's strange how silence feels different when it belongs to you. For months, my name had been whispered through boardrooms, courtrooms, and Twitter threads. Anonymous engineer, whistleblower, ghost in the machine. Now, finally, it was said out loud, and not with pity, with respect. The day Vector Core announced Lattice, the press conference streamed to more than 1 million viewers. Elliot introduced me personally. Innovation doesn't come from greed. It comes from integrity. And no one embodies that better than Maya Alvarez, the architect behind Lattice. My name echoed through that hall, through applause that sounded like vindication wrapped in thunder. For a moment, I felt the weight of every late night, every betrayal, every moment of silence I'd swallowed. And then, like an exhale after years underwater, it lifted. The reporters swarmed afterward. Some asked about North Harbor. Some asked about the patent war. I just smiled and said, "The truth has its own timing. I just let it run its course." That quote ended up everywhere. Forbes, Wired, Tech Pulse. Suddenly, I wasn't the engineer they'd erased. I was the architect who outsmarted her own bosses. North Harbor's collapse unfolded in slow motion. Derek's assets were frozen under the SEC's probe. Victor quietly resigned after a board vote of no confidence. And the few executives who'd clung to him began leaking internal emails to the press, desperate to save themselves. I didn't even need to push anymore. I built a machine that ran on karma. Weeks later, I was invited to keynote at the Global Women in Tech Summit in San Francisco. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about legacy. I stood backstage, the hum of the crowd vibrating through the floor, and thought about the irony. A year ago, I walked out of a building carrying a cardboard box. Now I was walking onto a stage carrying a movement. When they called my name, the lights felt like sunlight. When I was fired, someone told me I was replaceable. They were right, but not in the way they meant. Replaceable doesn't mean disposable. It means I can choose where to build next, who to build for, and what to leave behind. For anyone who's ever been erased, remember silence is a strategy, not surrender. And when the time comes, speak so clearly they can't rewrite you again. The applause that followed wasn't just loud, it was long. The kind that fills the gaps between who you were and who you've become. A few days later, An unexpected envelope arrived at my office. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Garrick's. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You win. I hope it was worth it. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt closure. Because yes, it was worth it. Every sleepless night, every careful move, every quiet, deliberate strike. Not because I destroyed him, but because I reclaimed myself. Months passed. Lattice became the gold standard in its field. My team flourished, promoted, credited, proud. Miguel ran the infrastructure division. Anita headed cybersecurity. And every Friday, when we met over coffee, someone always said the same thing before diving into project updates. Remember when they thought they owned us? And we'd all laugh. But there was one last unplanned twist to my story. One evening as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed with a notification, a new article from the Chronicle of Business Ethics. The headline read, Ex-North Harbor CEO found guilty of fraud. SEC settlement ends era of corporate exploitation. There was a paragraph buried halfway through that made me stop walking. Sources confirmed that the original complaint leading to the investigation came from an internal whistleblower, later identified as engineer Maya Alvarez. No more anonymity. No more quiet victories. My name was in print, not as a victim, not as a cautionary tale, but as the author of justice. That night, I stood on my balcony, overlooking the city lights reflecting off the bay. The air smelled of rain and electricity, the same way it had the night this all began. I raised my glass of whiskey to the skyline and whispered, They fired me to erase me. But all they did was give me time to write my name in permanent ink. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed. Not a sharp laugh, not a bitter one. Just quiet, the kind that feels like freedom. Revenge isn't chaos. It's choreography. It's the discipline of patience meeting the precision of truth. People think revenge is about rage, but the real kind, the kind that lasts, is about proof. Derek had his money, his charm, his investors. I had timestamps, signatures, and silence. And silence, when it's chosen, is undefeated. They wanted my absence to be their victory. Instead, it became my weapon. If you've ever been underestimated, remember, they only win when you stay silent. Speak with your work, your proof, your success, and let time do the talking. Hit like, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more true stories where calm minds serve cold revenge.